next up we've got Malte Cherdron, who's the Chief Operating Officer for GoEuro, which is a multimodal search engine, as I understand it, give or take.
So search and booking engine, yes.
Search and booking engine, of course, mustn't forget the booking side of what you do.
Yes.
You've recently picked up some more funding. Just wondering if you wanted to just let us know what you've been able to do since the last fundraising round with the additional investment that you received.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So the last funding round in 2016 was quite substantial for the company, raised about $70 million from investors like Silver Lake and Kleiner Perkins. But the growth has continued unabated. The growth does not depend on any particular funding round. So we're constantly adding new partners into the mix. We're integrating more of our travel partners, rail and bus companies, into fully integrated on-site booking, growing the team, improving the product. That is not really dependent on any individual funding event. That is a continuous growth of the company.
Okay, so I mean, so the focus is on getting the inventory into the system.
Getting it into the system, improving the way it is in the system, and just making it more and more usable over time.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so once you've got the inventory into the system, what are you then doing to attract customers? Because as a sort of B2C player, one of the things that we inevitably ask any B2C player is customer acquisition costs.
Of course.
How do you, you've got the inventory, you've got a great user experience, but how do you get those users to experience it?
And of course, initially you have to tell everybody about it, which means you need to do a lot of marketing. Thankfully, with the inventory we've got and the product we're offering, online marketing is very efficient as an acquisition channel in the beginning, and then over time you build repeat customers, right? You build direct traffic from people who've used the product before, liked it, come back, and of course that increases over time.
So it's a traditional approach of almost sort of like buying the traffic initially, but then converting that bought traffic to direct traffic because of the product
and
that
keep
you
reminding
offer.
people of the offers and keep bringing them back. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so in terms of the inventory, it's rail and bus. I mean, are you dependent on the technology of your partners in order to be able to integrate them into the system, or can you work with rail and bus companies to get their tech, suitably integratable
yes,
with your platform?
That's a great question. So it's actually rail, bus and air.
Yeah.
But rail and bus is let's say it's the big unsolved issue in travel. Of course, air travel has been solved in various ways already. And the thing about rail and bus is there's very, very little standardization out there. There is no IATA that standardizes systems and way things are booked. Basically, every single operator runs their own internal systems, from really, really good IT systems with great APIs you can just plug into and get all the inventory in real time, all the way down to smaller bus partners in Southern Europe, for example, with very little IT, basically selling paper tickets. Right? Yeah. So you've got to adapt your solution to fit the needs of every single partner in a different way. Right? There's no single one size fits all solution that will help us build this thing.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about some of your partners have got an API that you can feed into. I mean, you've got your own API, and one thing that when I was doing prepping for this interview, I noticed was quite interesting was a deal that you had with Tunar, which again we keep talking about Ctrip. They're a Ctrip brand, so you basically integrate the GoEuro with Tunar. So I'm just wondering, a number of questions on the back of that. How the take up of your API, and what else you're doing outside of your sort of core European.
So that's
market.
Actually the opposite kind of integration. Yeah. The first step is always to bring rail, bus and air content into our system, working with bus companies, working with rail companies all over Europe to make their content available online, even in cases where the partners themselves don't sell online. So we've got some solutions for smaller bus companies, for example, to be able to sell tickets on GoEuro, even though at home they only sell bits of paper at kiosks. Right? There's a lot of integration work going on there to make that happen. Now with Tunar, it's the opposite. It's making our content available to a third party, Tunar in this case in China. Very interesting cooperation, very interesting partner. We're super happy about how this is evolving. And it's a great learning for us also to see how users in a very different geography are interested in and are using our product and our content.
Okay, and so are you sort of using the data and insights from that partnership to adapt your core product, or is it just a question of sort of not the greatest technical term, but just sort of jiggling around with the API so that it's more China friendly. So is it the product or the tech?
So an API is an API.
Yeah.
It doesn't come in a specific language. It's not specific to China or anything. But you learn a lot about demand and how Chinese travelers in China planning their trip while they're in China, how they differ in what they're looking for, what are their needs from, let's say, people in Germany looking for a train trip in Germany.
Okay,
right.
So let's move from China back to Germany. I mean, you're Berlin based, and you're quite active in the sort of the German startup community. So I mean, there's a lot of startup communities around. I think every major city would claim to have its own travel startup community. I mean, what do you think is the USP of the Berlin travel startup community? What are they doing, sort of maybe differently from other startup communities out there?
So for starters, Berlin is just a great place to live. It's a fantastic city to be in. It's a very attractive place to bring people to from all over the world. So GoEuro at the moment is 250 people, give or take. Out of those, more than 200 come from countries outside of Germany, 45 different countries in total. So we're recruiting all over the world, and being in an attractive place just helps tremendously. Right? People like to be in Berlin. It's a great place not just to work, but just to live.
Okay, so and in terms of the startup, what's the support for startups in Berlin?
Yes.
Does it come from the state or the city or private sector? I mean, where's
there's a great ecosystem now that's evolved over the last, I'd say, 10 to 15 years in Berlin, of startups, not just in travel, but all kinds of mostly B2C startups. And that's a great network that's been evolving, and you can help each other, like you can exchange information. It's just great to be in a place where you're not the only player. It helps in recruiting because it makes Berlin even more attractive as a place for people to come to and work. It certainly helps solve the usual issues you have as a startup, and to just compare notes and grow together.
So just in terms of sort of like GoEuro's future development, I mean, what is on your roadmap? Is it just sort of pulling in more inventory? Is it getting more consumers, or is there anything else sort of left field that you're sort of looking at?
So first of all, it's actually recruiting and attracting more really good people to product, to tech, to marketing all over the company. And that really is the key to our growth. If you think about a company like GoEuro, there are no physical assets, right? There are partnerships, there are users, but at the core it's the people who build it every day and who grow it. So finding more talent, recruiting more talent into Berlin, into GoEuro, that's probably our biggest task at the moment.
Okay, so just expect an influx of CVs from the tnoozLIVE at ITB audience.
Happy to.
Okay.
But then, of course, on the output side, it is getting ever more inventory into the product in an ever more usable way. Actually, getting data into a system like ours is just the first step, right? Yeah. You then have to make it usable. And you know how complex travel booking can be, right? If you go beyond a single point-to-point standard second-class trip, you're traveling with a family. You want to reserve seats. One of you has a discount card. Somebody has something else. If you want to make all of that easily usable on a smartphone, ideally, there's a lot of work going into that. From making sure the inventory is there, it's correct, it's timely, to making that easily accessible in a product that doesn't overwhelm the user, yet still gives them all the options and all the information. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a valid point. As so sort of point A to point B is relatively simple, but the sort of stuff that you're doing is complicated, pulling in all, and then you've got to present it all on a smartphone.
And 70% plus of our users are on mobile devices these days. Okay. That's shifted. Within 5 years, that has shifted from 80-20 for desktop to now 70-30 in favor of mobile. Yeah. That's a much bigger challenge. It makes a lot of sense, of course, for travelers to use mobile devices.
Tip out? So 70-30, is that where is it going to get to 80-20?
Somewhere around there. There's always a use case for people to use their desktop devices, even though the desktop is no longer that clunky thing that sits on your table. It's typically a laptop. Yeah. And that's actually some convergence between those.
Yeah, at what point does a small laptop become a large smartphone? Exactly. That's another conversation for another time.
But you still see differences in how people use these devices.